2 Kings 1. And after Ahab's death, Moab rebelled against Israel. And Ahaziah fell through the bars of an upper room which he had in Samaria, and fell sick, and he sent messengers, and said to them, Go, ask Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, if I shall be healed of this disease. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel, that you go to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? And therefore thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from the bed on which thou hast gone up, but thou shalt surely die. So Elijah left. And the messengers returned to him, and he said to them, What is the matter, that you have returned? And they said to him, A man went out to meet us, and said to us, Go, return to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it because there is no God in Israel, that you send to inquire of Baal-zebub, god of Ekron? Therefore, from the bed on which you went up, you will not come down, but you will surely die. And he said to them, What was the appearance of the man who met you and spoke these words to you? And they said to him, He was a hairy man, and with a leather belt girded about his loins. Then he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent him a captain of 50 with his 50, and going up to him, for, behold, he was sitting on the top of the mountain, he said to him, Man of God, the king says, Come down. But Elijah answered, and said to the captain of 50, If I then be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. Then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And again the king sent him another captain of 50, with his 50, he answered him, saying, Man of God, thus saith the king, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Then the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. And he sent again a third captain of 50, with his 50, then the captain of 50 went up, and when he came, he fell on his knees before Elijah, and pleaded with him, saying, Man of God, let my life, I pray you, be precious in your sight, and the life of these 50 of yours servants. Behold, fire came down from heaven, and consumed those first two captains of 50, with their 50s, but now let my life be precious in your eyes. Then the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, Go down with this one, do not be afraid. And he arose, and went down with him to the king. And he said to him, Thus says the Lord, Why did you send messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Is it because there is no God in Israel, to consult his word? So from this bed, which you went up to, you will not come down, but you will surely die. So he died, according to the word of the Lord, which Elijah spoke, and Joram began to reign in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, because he had no son. The rest of the acts of Ahaziah, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? 2 Kings 2. It came to pass, when the Lord was about to lift Elijah up in a whirlwind into heaven, Elijah departed from Gilgal with Elisha. And Elijah said to Elisha, Stay here, because the Lord has sent me to Bethel. But Elisha said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And so they went to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel went out to meet Elisha, and said to him, Do you know that the Lord will take your master from over your head today? And he said, I also know, shut up. And Elijah said to him, Elisha, stay here, because the Lord has sent me to Jericho. But he said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And so they went to Jericho. Then the sons of the prophets who were in Jericho came near to Elisha and said to him, Do you know that today the Lord will take your master from over your head? And he said, I also know, shut up. And Elijah said, Stay here, because the Lord has sent me to Jordan. But he said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And so they both went together. And there were 50 men of the sons of the prophets, and they stood before them at a distance, and so both of them stood by Jordan. Then Elijah took his cloak and folded it, and smote the waters, which divided on both sides, and they both passed dry. It came to pass, when they had crossed over, that Elijah said to Elisha, Ask me what you want me to do for you, before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, A difficult thing you asked, if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be done to you, but if not, it will not be done. And it came to pass, as they were walking and talking, behold, a chariot of fire, with horses of fire, separated them one from the other, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. What seeing Elisha, cried out, my father, chariots of Israel, and their horsemen. And he never saw him again, and, taking his clothes, he tore them in two. He also lifted up Elijah's mantle, which had fallen from him, and, turning around, he stopped on the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him, and smote the waters, and said, Where is the Lord God of Elijah? When he smote the waters, they parted from one side to the other, and Elisha passed by. When the sons of the prophets who were opposite at Jericho saw him, they said, The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. And they came to meet him, and prostrated themselves to the ground before him. And they said to him, Behold, now there are among your servants 50 mighty men. Now let them go to seek your Lord. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord lifted him up and threw him into one of the mountains or into one of the valleys. But he said, Send them not. But they insisted with him, until, constrained, he said to them, Send. And they sent 50 men, who searched for him 3 days, but did not find him. Then they returned to him, for he stayed in Jericho, and he said unto them, Did I not tell you not to go? And the men of the city said to Elisha, Behold, the situation of this city is good, as my Lord sees it, but the waters are evil, and the land is barren. And he said, Bring me a new dish, and put salt in it. And they brought it. Then he went out to the spring of water, and put salt in it, and he said, Thus saith the Lord, I will heal these waters, and there shall be no more death or barrenness in them. So those waters are healthy to this day, according to the word that Elisha had spoken. So he went up from there to Bethel, and as he went up the way, some boys came out of the city, and they mocked him, and said to him, Go up, bald head, up, bald. And when he turned back, he saw them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods, and tore 42 of those boys to pieces. And from there he went to Mount Carmel, from where he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings 3. And Joram the son of Ahab began to reign over Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father, nor like his mother, because he took down the image of Baal, which his father had made. Yet he adhered to the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, wherewith he had caused Israel to sin. He did not depart from them. Then Mesha king of Moab was a cattle breeder, and he paid tribute to the king of Israel 100,000 male lambs, and 100,000 rams with their wool. But it came to pass, that when Ahab died, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. Therefore Joram at the same time left Samaria, and reviewed all Israel. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to war against the Moabites? And he said, I will go up, and I will be like you, my people like your people, and my horses like your horses. And he said, Which way shall we go up? Then he said, By the way of the wilderness of Edom. And the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom departed, and they walked around with a march of 7 days, and there was no water for the army or for the cattle that followed them. Then said the king of Israel, Ah! The Lord called these 3 kings to hand them over to the Moabites. And Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that we should inquire of the Lord through him? Then answered one of the servants of the king of Israel, saying, Here is Elisha the son of Shaphat, who poured water on the hands of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of the Lord is with him. Then the king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, and the king of Edom went down to him. But Elisha said to the king of Israel, What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother. But the king of Israel said to him, No, because the Lord has called these 3 kings to hand them over to the Moabites. And Elisha said, As the Lord of hosts lives, in whose presence I stand, if I did not respect the presence of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, I would not look at you or see you. Now then, fetch me a musician. And it came to pass, as the musician played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley many ditches. For thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, and ye shall not see rain, yet this valley will be filled with so much water that you, your livestock, and your livestock will drink. And yet this is little in the eyes of the Lord, he will also give the Moabites into your hand. And you shall smite every strong city, and every choice city, and cut down every good tree, and choke up every spring of water, and spoil every good field with stones. And it came to pass in the morning, when the food offering was offered, behold, the waters came by the way of Edom, and the earth was filled with water. When all the Moabites heard that the kings had gone up to fight against them, they summoned all who were old enough to put on a girdle and from there upwards, and they stood at the borders. And rising early in the morning, and the sun rising over the waters, the Moabites saw the waters red as blood in front of them. And they said, This is blood, surely kings destroyed each other with the sword and killed one another. Now, therefore, to the prey, Moabites. But when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites arose, and smote the Moabites, who fled before them and entered their land, smiting the Moabites there also. And they razed the cities, and each one threw his stone into every good field, and filled them up, and stopped up all the springs of water, and cut down all the good trees, until only in Kir-Hareseth did they leave the stones, but the slingers surrounded it and wounded it. But when the king of Moab saw that the battle prevailed against him, he took with him 700 men who drew swords to break through against the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his firstborn son, who was to reign in his place, and offered him up as a burnt offering on the wall, whereupon there was great indignation in Israel. Therefore they withdrew from him, and returned to their own land. 2 Kings 4. And a woman, of the women of the sons of the prophets, cried out to Elisha, saying, My husband, your servant, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor came to take my 2 sons to be servants. And Elisha said to him, What shall I do to you? Tell me that's what you have at home. And she said, Your servant has nothing in the house but a cruse of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow empty vessels from all your neighbors, not a few. Then go in, and shut the door upon you, and upon your children, and pour the oil into all those vessels, and set aside the one that is full. So she departed from him, and shut the door on herself and her children, and they brought her the vessels, and she filled them. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, Bring me another vessel. But he said to him, There is no more vessel. Then the oil stopped. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go, sell the oil, and pay your debt, and you and your children live on the rest. One day, as Elisha went to Shunem, there was an important woman there, who detained him to eat bread. And it happened that as often as she passed by, she would go in to eat bread. And she said to her husband, Behold, I have seen that this one who always passes by us is a holy man of God. So let's make him a little room next to the wall, and there let's put him a bed, a table, a chair and a lamp, and it shall come to pass, that when he comes to us, he will withdraw there. And it came to pass one day that he came there, and withdrew to that room, and lay down. Then he said to his servant Gehazi, Call this Shunammite. And calling her, she stood before him. For he had said to Gehazi, Say to him, Behold, you have treated us most carefully, what is to be done for you? Is there anything that can be spoken of by you to the king, or to the captain of the army? And she said, I dwell among my people. Then he said, What shall be done for her? And Gehazi said, Why, she has no child, and her husband is old. Therefore he said, Call her. And, calling her, she went to the door. And he said, At this determined time, according to the time of life, you will embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, man of God, do not lie to your handmaid. And he conceived the woman, and gave birth to a son, at the appointed time, in the following year, as Elisha had told her. And as the son grew up, it came to pass one day that he went out to his father, who was with the reapers. And he said to his father, Alas, my head! Oh, my head! Then he said to a young man, Take him to his mother. And he took him, and brought him to his mother, and he was on his knees until noon, and he died. And she went up, and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and he shut the door, and went out. And she called her husband, and said, Send me now one of the young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come back. And he said, Why do you go to him today? It's not new moon or Saturday. And she said, Everything goes well. Then she saddled the donkey, and said to her servant, Lead and walk, and do not delay in the walk, but when I tell you. So she departed and went to the man of God on Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her from a distance, that she said to Gehazi her servant, Behold the Shunammite. Now therefore, run to meet him, and say to him, Is it well with you? Does it go well with your husband? Does it go well with your son? And she said, It's fine. So when she came to the man of God on the mountain, she took hold of his feet, but Gehazi came to take it away. But the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is grieved with bitterness, and the Lord has hidden me, and has not revealed me. And she said, Have I asked my Lord for a son? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? And he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins, take my staff in thy hand, and go. If you meet someone, do not greet him, and if someone greets you, do not answer him, and put my staff on the boy's face. But the mother of the boy said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. Then he got up, and followed her. And Gehazi went before them, and laid his staff upon the boy's face, but there was no voice or sense in it, and she found him again, and brought him warning, saying, The child did not wake up. And when Elisha arrived at that house, behold, the boy was lying dead on his bed. So he went in, and shut the door on them both, and prayed to the Lord. And she went up to the bed and lay down on top of the child, and putting her mouth on his mouth, and her eyes on his eyes, and her hands on his hands, she stretched herself over him, and the boy's flesh warmed. Then he came down, and walked in that house to and fro, and went up again, and spread himself over him, so the boy sneezed 7 times, and opened his eyes. Then he called Gehazi, and said, Call the Shunammite. And he called her, and she came to him. And he said, Take thy son. And she went in, and prostrated herself at her feet, and bowed to the ground, and she took her son and went out. And when Elisha returned to Gilgal, there was a famine in that land, and the sons of the prophets sat before him, and he said to his servant, Put the large pot on the fire, and make a broth of herbs for the sons of the prophets. Then one of them went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and plucked from it, filling its cover with colocynths, and he came, and cut them in the pot of broth, because they didn't know them. So they fed the men. And it came to pass, as they ate of that broth, they cried out and said, Man of God, there is death in the pot. They couldn't eat. But he said, Bring flour. And he cast it into the pot, and said, Feed the people to eat. And there was no more harm in the pot. And a man came from Baal-Shalisha, and brought the man of God loaves of the first fruits, 20 barley loaves, and green ears in their straw, and said, Give to the people, that they may eat. But his servant said, How shall I set this before 100 men? And he said, Give to the people, that they may eat, for thus saith the Lord, They shall eat, and there shall be left over. Then he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of the Lord. 2 Kings 5. And Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man in the sight of his Lord, and highly respected, for by him the Lord had delivered the Syrians, and this man was a valiant hero, but a leper. And troops went out from Syria, from the land of Israel, and took captive a girl who was in the service of Naaman's wife. And she said this to her mistress, Would that my Lord were before the prophet who is in Samaria, he would restore him from his leprosy. So Naaman went and told his master, saying, Thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. Then said the king of Syria, Go, walk, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And he went and took in his hand 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. And he took the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Then, when this letter comes to you, know that I sent Naaman my servant to you to cure him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel read the letter, that he tore his clothes, and said, Am I a God, to kill and to quicken, that he should send a man to me, that I might cure him of his leprosy? For what indeed notice, I beseech you, and see that he seeks occasion against me. But when Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king, saying, Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came, with his horses and his chariot, and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Then Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, Go and wash yourself in Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be healed and you will be clean. But Naaman was very wroth, and went away, saying, Behold, I thought in myself, Surely he shall go out, and stand, and call upon the name of the Lord his God, and shall sweep his hand over the place, and restore the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? And he turned and went away in indignation. Then his servants came near to him, and spoke to him, and said, My father, if the prophet had told you some great thing, would you not do it? How much more, when he says to you, Wash yourself, and you will be clean? So he went down and dipped in Jordan 7 times, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh became like the flesh of a child, and he was purified. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him, and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, except in Israel. Now therefore, I beseech thee, accept a blessing from thy servant. But he said, As the Lord lives, in whose presence I stand, I will not accept it. And she urged him to accept it, but he refused. And Naaman said, If thou wilt not, let thy servant be given a load of earth sufficient to carry 2 mules, for this servant of yours will never again offer a burnt offering or sacrifice to any other god except the Lord. In this matter may the Lord forgive your servant, when my master enters the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I also bow down in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down like this in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant in this. And he said to him, Go in peace. And it was from him at a small distance. Then Gehazi, servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my lord spared this Syrian Naaman, not receiving anything from his hand that he brought, but as the Lord lives, I will run after him and receive something from him. And it was Gehazi who overtook Naaman, and Naaman, seeing that he was running after him, got out of the chariot to meet him, and said to him, Is everything all right? And he said, All is well, my master sent me, saying, Behold, 2 young men of the sons of the prophets came to me from the mountain of Ephraim, give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. And Naaman said, Be pleased to take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 sacks, with 2 changes of clothes, and he put them on 2 of his servants, who brought them before him. And when he came to a certain height, he took them from their hands, and deposited them in the house, and he sent those men away, and they went away. So he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, Where do you come from, Gehazi? And he said, Thy servant went neither to the one place nor to the other. But he said to him, Did not my heart go with you, when that man returned from his chariot to meet you? Was it the occasion for you to take silver, and to take clothes, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, menservants and maidservants? Therefore the leprosy of Naaman will cling to you and your descendants forever. Then he went out from before him a leper, white as snow. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and leave a comment.